Good afternoon, sir.
Good afternoon.
Can I call Simon Recaldin, please?
Yes.
Thank you.
I do solemnly,
sincerely and truly declare and affirm
sincerely and truly declare and affirm
that the evidence I shall give
that the evidence I shall give
shall be the truth,
shall be the truth,
the whole truth,
and
nothing but the truth.
and nothing but the truth. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Can you give your full name, please?
Simon Recaldin.
Mr. Recaldin, you should have in front of you 3 witness statements. I'm going to just take you through each one of them. The first is dated the 30th of March 2023, and it has the URN WITN 09890100. Do you have that in front of you?
I do.
Yes. Could I ask you to turn to the final substantive page in that statement? Page 15, and is that your signature?
It is.
Thank you. The second statement is dated the 13th of July of this year, 2023. It has the URN WITN 09890200. Do you have a copy of that in front of you?
I do.
And if you could turn to the final substantive page, that's page 31. Is that your signature at the end?
It is.
Thank you. And finally, we have a statement, a third statement of today's date, 29th of September. That's WITN 09890300. Do you have a copy of that in front of you?
I do, but without that reference on it.
Yes. That's absolutely fine. If I could ask you to turn to page 5 of that document, you have the original in front of you, or a version that hasn't been uploaded, but it's entirely the same. Can you confirm that that is your signature on page 5? Thank you very much. Are all 3 of those statements taken together true to the best of your knowledge and belief?
They are.
Thank you. As you know, those statements will be uploaded and published in due course. You are the Remediation Unit Director at the Post Office, is that right?
I am.
Can you tell us what the Remediation Unit is? I think it was previously known as the Historical Matters Unit, is that correct?
Correct. The remediation unit, I'm head up the compensation schemes for postmasters for the Post Office.
Thank you. And you've been in that position since the 10th of January 2022, is that correct?
That is correct.
Were you at the Post Office before that or in another job?
I was not in the Post Office before that. I was working for another role.
Thank you. You're involved in managing the delivery of the Horizon Shortfall Scheme, the criminals appeals process, and matters such as that. It may be that you make a return appearance to this inquiry in phase 5 or 6 or 7. I'm not going to ask you today about any of those issues. Today, we're going to address a single issue, and that is various prosecution statistics that have been provided. To begin with, I'd just like to get some terms or acronyms out of the way. Can we start with post-conviction disclosure exercise? It's referred to in your statement by PCDE, but if we could stick to the full title, post-conviction disclosure exercise, can you briefly tell us what that is?
A post-conviction disclosure exercise is an exercise of bringing data together within certain parameters in order to ascertain whether or not we can appropriately evaluate them for the appeals process.
And that results, I think, in the identification of what you call potential future appellants. Yes. Again, in your statement, you refer to those as PFAs, but if we could stick to that during your evidence as potential future appellants. Can you tell us what is a potential future appellant? It's
somebody who they would have been convicted, and that conviction might have been would have been done by Post Office as the prosecutor. The prosecution would be based wholly or partly on data derived from Horizon, And finally, the prosecution would have been taking place between 1999, 2000 and 2013.
And who set those parameters?
So we worked with P&P, Peters and Peters, our legal, and those were set through a disclosure management document that was originally set up, and an addendum to the disclosure management document, which was an amalgamation of a number of spreadsheets found across Post Office that pulled all that data together in one place that became the PCDE.
Thank you very much. We'll get to the spreadsheets shortly. You have defined horizon-related cases. Can you tell us what that or how you define a horizon-related case?
Horizon data is where the evidence provided in the prosecution either was essential, horizon was essential to that prosecution, or partly used as evidence for the prosecution.
In terms of figures, you have identified 700 potential future appellants. Is that correct?
Correct.
88 convictions, or in fact, I think 2 more today, have been overturned. Is that correct?
Post Office 88 and non-Post Office prosecutions overturned. 1 for CPS, 2 from Northern Ireland, and today 2 from Scotland.
Thank you. And you've identified that there are 538 that have not yet appealed. Is that correct?
Some of those have appealed and are in the process of having their appeal looked into.
I think in your third statement, you have given various numbers of cases that were either abandoned or refused, or cases that are pending.
I have.
Thank you. We don't need to repeat those now.
Thank you.
To identify what you've termed potential future appellants, you have created a casework spreadsheet. Can you briefly tell us what casework spreadsheets are?
So the casework spreadsheets is work identified across the country when we decided to amalgamate all the information to understand the population of potentially unsafe convictions. So we went out to P&P, went to Peters and Peters, went out to investigate all those. Several of those came in. I think the number in my witness statement is around 100. Were brought back into amalgamate into one central database, and then that was analysed and put into the PCDE along the 4 criteria which I've previously described.
So that's the post-conviction disclosure exercise.
Correct. Sorry.
Can you tell us who was providing those figures to Peters and Peters?
It was through a disclosure process, so Post Office were doing that, and they were independently going out and getting those spreadsheets, the security team and other teams.
And you have created something called the Master Search Term List. Can you tell us what the Master Search Term List is, please?
So the Master Search Term is the prerequisite to populating the PCDE.
So the PCDE, the post-conviction disclosure exercise, that is a document, is it?
Yes.
Yes. I want to ask you this afternoon about a number of different requests that have been made, that both by the inquiry and also under the Freedom of Information process, that appear to give different statistics, and I want to try and get to understand why they are different. If I could ask you to look, if we could bring on screen, in fact, paragraph 25 of your second witness statement, so that is WITN 09890200. Thank you very much. And if we look at paragraph 25, that is page 9. So this was a request from the inquiry itself rather than a Freedom of Information request. And we can see there it's summarised by you in your second witness statement. You say request number 6, that's I think a Rule 9 request number 6, asked for confirmation of the number of prosecutions the Post Office brought in total between 2000 and 2015, and B, the number of those prosecutions brought that resulted in a conviction. And you've set out there that as part of that, Herbert Smith Freehills explained that they were instructed that the Post Office brought a total of 844 prosecutions between 2000 and 2015, which resulted in 705 convictions on the basis of the following understanding of the scope of the request and the limitations. So you set out after that various limitations that applied. Can you summarise for us the limitations that apply in the identification of those figures? So that's 844 prosecutions in that 15-year period, resulting in 705 convictions. And I think you'll find those for your assistance at paragraph 31 of your witness statement, although we don't need to bring that up on screen. Thanks. If it assists, I think you say, for example, that they were based on information in the casework spreadsheets. Is that correct?
Correct.
And that there was a degree of verification from underlying papers, but that some dates couldn't be verified.
Correct.
And in fact, you've carried out further verification checks, and now the figure is slightly different. So it's now 781 prosecutions with 700 convictions. Is that correct? So that the number of prosecutions has come down somewhat, and the number of convictions has slightly changed.
That is correct.
So we have there 781 prosecutions with 700 convictions. That's nearly 90% of prosecutions resulting in convictions. You're not here to give expert evidence, but does the Post Office have a view as to whether that is a high conviction rate or not?
Doesn't have a view.
Has it considered whether there is a high conviction rate or not? Are you aware of?
No, I don't know.
I'm going to move on to the freedom of information requests, and we're going to see what looks like inconsistent figures being given, and I'd like you to explain briefly why that might be. We're going to look at the first freedom of information request. That's at paragraph 37 of your statement. It's page 13. Could we please bring that up on screen? So page 13 of the second statement. Thank you. So you've called it here the Freedom of Information Act Response Number 1, 26th of September 2016. And the question, the request to the Post Office was how many sub-postmasters have had charges filed against them for false accounting and inflating figures and or theft since 2010. And the response we can see below, there are various statistics provided in a table. If we could scroll down slightly. Can you assist us with telling us who compiled this response and how they went about that task?
It was the I cannot recall who did it. I do have it in my notes. If you're,
I don't think we need a name, but in terms of the department,
my understanding it would have been been overlooked by the legal department.
And can you briefly summarise for us how they went about obtaining those figures?
They would have done an exercise asking various people questions around gathering the data together.
Where from? You've described various different spreadsheets, databases, etc. Can you assist us with how those figures were obtained?
That would have been the starting point. They would have looked at the databases containing the number of prosecutions in that period.
I think you've said in your statement that the person who is understood to have compiled the data has confirmed the source of the data is likely to have been the casework spreadsheets.
Correct.
Is that correct?
Correct.
And are there any limitations in those figures that you'd like to draw to the inquiry's attention?
The limitations are based on the question asked in terms of the the request around false accounting and inflation figures, and since 2010. So obviously the data produced is limited by the question.
Going to move on to another Freedom of Information request, and that's set out at page 14 of your statement. It's referred to in your statement as FOIA, that's Freedom of Information Act Response Number 2, 22nd of May 2020. Now, this was a request that was made by Nick Wallace, a journalist and author, and that reads as follows. The Post Office is asked to supply by year the number of prosecutions of sub-postmasters, their assistants, or post office workers, e.g. those in Crown Post Offices, brought by the Post Office/Royal Mail since 1990. Please also supply by year the number of criminal convictions which resulted from those prosecutions. It's quite a lengthy response, but I will read it all out. The response was as follows. We do not hold all of the information which pertains to your request. The information we do hold is set out in the table below. However, the data is likely to be incomplete and therefore should be treated with caution for the following reasons. And it then gives 4 reasons below. The first is that the table below is based solely on information held by the Post Office Limited and doesn't therefore reflect information, if any, that may be held by Royal Mail. The request covers a lengthy period of time extending back 30 years. Data relating to convictions between 1991 and 2006, in particular, have been compiled from extremely limited available material. The table excludes cases where the data held by the Post Office is inconclusive as to whether the prosecution was brought by any other organisation or whether it resulted in a conviction. In addition, although you have asked for information on both prosecutions and convictions, the table contains information on convictions only. This is because Post Office does not hold a sufficiently complete set of data for prosecutions which do not result in a conviction, again reflecting the length and aged period of the request. The below table sets out the number of prosecutions brought for which we hold records and have been able to determine that there was a conviction. To date, we have been unable to locate any records before 1991. There are 104 cases where Post Office Limited holds information recording that the defendant was convicted, but not the date of the conviction, for which the year has been listed as unknown. And then if we go over the page, we have there a table. Now, it doesn't seem to have entirely answered the request because it doesn't separate out prosecutions and convictions. You were able to provide the inquiry with various statistics for prosecutions and convictions between 2000 and 2015 that we've just talked about. Can you assist us with why it wasn't able to provide both of those details, so both convictions and prosecutions?
Because the number of prosecutions, we didn't have a complete set of data for the number of prosecutions.
Thank you. So you did have some data, and that data fed into the earlier figure that you gave to the inquiry.
Yes.
But here, that information wasn't provided because it wasn't felt to be complete. Is that correct?
Correct.
Thank you. If you add up the total between 2000 and 2015, the number you reach is different to the one that was provided to the inquiry, the response that we've been over already. Can you assist us with why those figures might be different?
No. I'm happy to look at it and come back to the inquiry.
Well, at paragraph 43 and onwards in your statement, you provide some limitations to this data.
Correct.
You've come here today to assist the inquiry.
I do.
In respect of this data and in respect of the information you provided in that statement. Can you briefly summarise for us what you consider to be the key limitations to that data?
Again, it's the question is asked, the data that is taken from the spreadsheet, and to ensuring that the data is robust in terms of the prosecuting authority and the details of each case itself.
I mean, perhaps if we scroll down and look at paragraph 43 and 44 in your statement.
Yep.
That may assist you with providing a slightly fuller answer in respect of the limitations. If you could,
So,
yes.
as per the statement, prosecutions had definitely resulting convictions and not prosecutions. Cases in which prosecuting authority was believed to be post office, and as opposed to other prosecuting authorities. Cases which appeared to be based on shortfall of the branch accounts, i.e., for example, there may be cases which are referred to robbery or others, and therefore not shortfall related. And cases where defendants were, their title didn't fit with the description being asked.
Further details set out in your witness statement. Can we move on, please, to the information provided to the Court of Appeal in the Hamilton proceedings? That's page 19 of your witness statement. It's the bottom of page 19. That can come up on screen as well, thank you. In the Hamilton proceedings, the Court of Appeal asked counsel for the appellants whether they wished to argue that the number of prosecutions rose immediately after Horizon was rolled out. And it was argued by counsel for the appellants that, I think you set out in your statement, that there were maybe 2 or 3 prosecutions pre-Horizon, and it went up to 40 or 50 post-Horizon. The answer from counsel to the post office is set out in your witness statement. If we could go to that, that's at paragraph 50, so it's over the page, please. I think these are the words of Mr. Altman, King's counsel, in the Court of Appeal, and he's there given a number of statistics. Now we see there, he says, for example, in 1999 there were 60 in total. That figure doesn't appear in that table that we've just looked at for 1999. The figure that's given to Mr. Wallace is 50. Are you able to assist us at all with that difference?
Yeah, again, it's down to the question that's being asked, but also this data is dynamic, so it's moving all the time as the PCDE exercise carries on. More data is collected, and the numbers move all the time as we get more certainty around the numbers of prosecutions and the numbers of convictions.
But I think there's a more significant answer that's set out in your witness statement, and that is that the 1999 figure of 60 included things like robberies and burglaries.
Correct. Because it was all convictions, and these are related to Horizon-related convictions.
So the figure there, 60 for 1999, included things like robberies and burglaries, whereas the post-Horizon figures, so the 2000 onwards figures, am I right in understanding that those were actually figures excluding robberies and burglaries, etc., because they focused on Horizon and the way that you've described a Horizon conviction?
That is my understanding.
Are we therefore to understand that that's very much like comparing chalk and cheese in terms of those two figures, because robberies and burglaries are obviously totally different subjects that aren't reflected in those later figures?
Correct.
That was then, as you set out in your witness statement, accompanied by a note to the Court of Appeal, which gave some of the limitations in those figures. I'm not going to bring it up on screen, and it may not yet be available to court participants, but it will be shortly. We have a unique reference number for that I'll provide now for the purpose of the transcript. That's INQ 0000721. And perhaps that's something that we'll look at in more depth in phase 5 of this inquiry. Again, those figures don't match the ones that were provided to the inquiry. I think we were given the figure of 705 convictions. Are you able to assist at all with why those figures and the ones that were provided to the inquiry are different?
Again, because it's dynamic. The exercise, I think the number went from 705 to 700 as the data is analysed and reasons for taking the cases out of that population are found. For example, there may be a case that was that the initial indication was that it was the conviction was in England, but following research, that case might have been discovered to be in Scotland and therefore been taken out of the PCDE.
Thank you. I think that you have other explanations that are also provided at paragraph 54 onwards in your witness statement.
Correct.
We can move on to the third Freedom of Information Act response. That's at page 23 of your witness statement. Could we please bring that up on the screen? It's paragraph 56. 23. This was a request of the 23rd of April 2021, and the request was as follows. I would like to know when the last time Post Office attempted a prosecution. I would also like to know the last time a sub-postmaster was unwilling or unable to make good any reported shortfalls was prosecuted. The response from the Post Office of the 20th of May 2021 said, Post Office Limited last prosecuted an individual in 2019. This prosecution was not branch-related and did not relate to or rely on any evidence from Horizon. Then went on to say, Post Office Limited's prosecution records are incomplete. It is not possible to determine in any given case whether the person who was prosecuted was unwilling or unable to make good a shortfall, nor when the last such circumstances arose. The last time a postmaster was prosecuted by Post Office Limited in relation to a shortfall identified within their branch was 2015. Post Office Limited does not know, however, whether any postmasters have been prosecuted in relation to shortfalls at their branch by any other prosecuting entity subsequent to 2015. Is that response accurate?
I understand it's still to be accurate, yes, and consistent with the latest information that we have.
Thank you. I think you give some information in paragraph 59 about a 2019 case. Are you able to assist us with that, please?
There was a 2019 case, and that was a sort of a head office case and wasn't Horizon related.
Thank you. Moving on to the fourth Freedom of Information Act request, and that's on page 24. Thank you. If we could just scroll down slightly. We have there at paragraph 60. At the request on the 26th of April, please confirm how many criminal prosecutions took place against postmasters and postmistresses for fraud and or false accounting in the 10 years prior to the introduction of the Horizon IT computer system. And then we have the answer at paragraph 61. I can confirm that Post Office holds some information in relation to this. The Horizon IT system was introduced in 1999. For the 10-year prior to that, between 1989 and 1999, Post Office cannot confirm the number of criminal prosecutions that took place. This is because the age and manner in which information was recorded during this period before widespread use of computerized records means it's not possible to verify the accuracy of Post Office records. The surviving historical records for pre-1999 cases are extremely limited, and the information cannot be relied on as definitive. A search of these records provides information about 57 prosecutions that Post Office appears to have carried out that resulted in convictions. These were initiated after a shortfall was identified in the relevant individual's branch, which, for the purpose of this data, usually relate to cases recorded as theft, fraud, cash loss, audit shortage, or false accounting, and does not include convictions which appear not to have relied on Horizon data in whole or in part, e.g. burglaries or robberies.
Yeah.
Is that response correct?
No, I think there's been a mistake in there, if I may advise the inquiry. As per my statement, in the final sentence, it says any conviction before 2000 cannot have relied on Horizon because Horizon hadn't been installed. So that's an error, and my apologies for that error.
The 57 figure there, 57 prosecutions in the 10 years prior to Horizon, that doesn't seem to tally with the response that was provided to Mr. Wallace or a later response that we're going to see. Are you able to assist us with that inconsistency?
Because it was limited to shortfall cases. So it exclude, the 57 convictions excluded cases that did not appear to arise from a shortfall in the branch accounts, even though evidence from rise was irrelevant on these cases.
So I think you're speaking a little too quickly for the stenographer. Are you able to repeat what you just said?
I refer to paragraph 62 into the 57 convictions excluded cases that did not appear to arise from a shortfall in branch accounts.
And are you able to briefly summarise paragraph 63 and 64 of your witness statement, which also provide further explanation as to why those numbers are different?
Yes, the 57 including convictions of individuals regardless.
Sorry, if you could slow down slightly, the stenographer's struggling to keep up.
Regardless of their specific role, despite the fact that the request was for referred to SPMs. Because this had been approached in response to the preceding information request.
We're going to now look at the 5th Freedom of Information Act response. That's the 24th of March 2023. Can we look at page 26, please? Paragraph 65. I'm going to briefly take you through this response. The request was, can you say how many sub-postmasters you prosecuted between 1990 and 1999? Can you say how many sub-postmasters you prosecuted between 2000 and 2009? Again, looking for that difference between the two. What is the percentage increase in the latter figure? What percentage of 1990 to 1999 convictions were overturned? What percentage of the latter figures were overturned? The response is as follows. We can confirm that the Post Office does hold the information you've requested. For the period of 1990 to 1999, Post Office cannot verify the accuracy of this information due to the age and way the information was recorded before the widespread use of computerized systems. The surviving historical records for pre-1999 cases are extremely limited, and the information cannot be relied on as definitive. It then goes on to say a search of these records provides information, has provided the following information. Number one, in answer to the question, can you say how many sub-postmasters you prosecuted between 1990 and 1999? The response is, due to the limited records, we can confirm there were 65 convictions for postmasters. 2, can you say how many sub-postmasters you prosecuted between 2000 and 2009? And the answer there is 380. What is the percentage increase in the latter figure? And it says 484%, but please note caveat in relation to limitation of records as above. What percentage of 1990 to 1999 convictions were overturned? 0%. What percentage of the latter figure were overturned? 8%. These are once again different figures. Can you assist us with this response and whether that response is accurate?
The percentage given is absolutely not accurate. And with the
scroll up. Thank you. So we'll just scroll up to have a look at the figure that's provided there. Yes, sorry. Can you assist us?
So I think the percentage was worked out at sort of 484%, one of the numbers, which is a human error. And again, with apologies to the inquiry, that's wrong. They will compare the numbers. Were comparing convictions with prosecutions, which is a nonsense. So that can be disregarded if I could be so bold.
So the figure there incorrectly compared the percentage for the number of prosecutions with the number of convictions for the different years. So they're
correct.
Again comparing chalk and cheese.
You can do yes, correct.
Yes. Are there any other limitations to that data, or is there any other reason why the figures are different to previous figures we've seen?
As per my witness statement, we were able to provide figures for prosecution did not result in convictions in response to this request of the post-99 period because of the additional work for the inquiry. And any data pre-99 is very difficult and cannot be relied on in any way.
Sorry, could you just expand upon that?
Because it's simply because of the limitation of availability of data and its reliability.
So in terms of pre-1999, so pre-Horizon data, is the Post Office's position that that data is unreliable because of the lack of information that you have available to you?
Yes.
We've seen quite a variation in figures this afternoon. Can you assist us with why overall there is such a inconsistency or lack of consistency in these figures?
Absolutely like to. So, firstly, each FOIA request may have a slightly different question, do have different questions, and therefore that will drive differences in numbers. So it's the parameters of the information requests are different. Secondly, as hopefully I've tried to describe, the data revolves over a period of time, and it continues to be. This is a dynamic database and continues to be updated and continues to move, and therefore, depending when the requests come in, will be dependent on the information that comes out. So the data will move accordingly, and it depends on the time that the requests are entered. In respect to, in particular, around the 22nd of May FOIA requests, again, with apologies to the inquiry, the inaccuracies are in that data set. And we now recognise that in terms of the drawing up of my second witness statement. We've recognised that, and there were errors in that, and again, with apologies. And that will be corrected.
Thank you. That 22nd of May 2020 request, that was the request that was made by Nick Wallace. I believe the Post Office has written to him today to apologise for the errors in the data that were provided. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Can you assist us with why it was just today that the Post Office wrote to Mr. Wallace, given that your witness statement, for example, your second witness statement, was now written some time ago?
We felt it was appropriate to advise him regarding an update of his freedom of information request at the same time as the inquiry.
But you updated the inquiry on the 13th of July 2023 with figures. Why has the letter appeared in his inbox today?
We thought it was appropriate to advise him.
Why today, though? We're having a hearing today. Is that a coincidence?
I don't think so.
So it was intentionally to apologise to him prior to your giving evidence?
Yes.
You've produced an appendix with more accurate figures, and that's, I think you call Appendix 2. Could we bring that up on screen, please? That's WITN 09890208. Thank you. If we could zoom out to get a better picture of the overall table, please. Thank you very much. Do you have more confidence in the figures that are provided here than in the earlier table that we saw?
I do, with the caveat, if I may, to say that these numbers are dynamic because we keep on improving our data.
Okay, and can you just briefly explain the difference between the shaded area, the unshaded area, and also why certain numbers are in brackets and some aren't?
I can. The pre-2000 data, which is the darker background, and from 1990 to 1999, relates to all offence types where the conviction has been confirmed or is assumed, where the defendant was an SPM, assistant, or a post office employee, including all case types. So there's all convictions. And then the figure in the brackets are likely to involve a shortfall in the branch.
Sorry. A shortfall? Some people might use these statistics to suggest that there was an increase in prosecutions by the Post Office in the years prior to the rollout. We see there 26 and 51 in the years 1998 and 1999. Other people might use the figures we've heard, the 484% increase in that Freedom of Information request, for example, to suggest that the number of prosecutions dramatically increased in the decade after Horizon. You're not a statistician or an expert witness today. Can you tell us what the Post Office's position is in respect of those two positions?
Firstly, hopefully, as I've already articulated, the 484% is a human error and a nonsense. So again, apologies for that. But in terms of the numbers before and after the introduction of Horizon, which was 1999 to 2000 time, I can confirm from the stats that and I'm not a statistician, but the numbers increase before and of prosecutions increase before and after. Sorry, convictions increase before and after the introduction of Horizon.
Statistically correct, but I think you have also said in your evidence today that your figures, there are issues with your figures pre-Horizon.
Correct.
So in light of the issues that you've raised regarding the figures pre-Horizon, does the Post Office have a position, has it taken a position, or has it carried out an analysis and produced something conclusive which can say whether the number of prosecutions increased before Horizon or whether there was a significant increase after Horizon, one way or another?
So we have carried out an exercise as per the bracketed numbers to see whether or not they're shortfall related. And then the remainder, the 2000 onwards, are Horizon related. Now, in terms of the numbers that are shaded in brackets, clearly Horizon wasn't there, and therefore we've taken a number of definitions of what could be a shortfall, depending on the investigation and depending on the data that we've gathered. So if there's fraud or something or another description of the activity that's been investigated, we have associated that with a potential shortfall, and therefore we would put it in that bracketed population.
I'm not sure that assists us either way. You're identifying that you have confirmed those statistics.
Correct.
But does the Post Office, does the Post Office consider itself able to say, to put this matter to bed, whether there was or was not a significant increase in prosecutions following the implementation of Horizon?
There were an increase in convictions coming up to the introduction of Horizon, and there were a continued increase in convictions after the introduction of Horizon. The root cause of those, I don't know.
And when you say there was an increase, that there is statistically, from the information you've gathered, there was an increase before Horizon.
Yes.
But as you've said, the records are a little dodgy.
Not
to say the
great.
least.
I didn't use the word dodgy, but they are potentially inaccurate simply because of the length of time that has been between now and then.
And are the records that post-date Horizon more accurate because of the electronic
the
records?
automation, correct.
Automation. Thank you very much. I feel like we've had enough of statistics for the afternoon. I don't think there are any questions. Mr. Whittam may have a question, in fact.
Richard Whittam on behalf of Fujitsu. You've been very helpful.
I don't think your microphone's
It's
working.
showing.
Now it is.
Is that working?
Yes.
Thank you. Technical problems out of the way and back to statistics. Mr. Blake was asking you to put these matters to bed. It's not quite as simple as that, is it? You've been very frank with your analysis of matters, and it's as simple as this, isn't it? You can only gather statistics that were recorded at the time and still exist? You'll have to say yes. I can see you nodding simply because of the shorthand note. That 1999 and before then, for all the caveats we've had set out, we don't need to repeat them, the records are incomplete and therefore unreliable.
Is that a statement, or if that's a question?
Do you agree with that?
Yes, because of the passage of time, I recognise that there is difficulty in gathering data pre-1999.
Because those records can't be verified. You agree with that?
Some of the records that are there can be verified.
But if things weren't recorded at the time or can't be found, you can't say that they are accurate figures.
If they can't be found, correct.
And as you've made plain, the non-conviction cases data pre-1999 is very limited and incapable of being verified as accurate. It's paragraph 24 of your statement, if it helps. It's your words.
Yes. I think it's certainly limited. Some of it is capable of being verified. If it's there, we can verify it.
But it's the things that aren't there that cause the problem.
To your point.
And you used the description of comparison. Does that work again now? For some reason it comes out, I'm sorry.
Start the question again, sorry.
Certainly. You've described the comparison that was being sought of you in the Freedom of Information Act response number 5 as being a nonsense because it's comparing different things.
I described the percentage that was calculated at 484% as a nonsense because it compares convictions with prosecutions, and it should be discounted as a figure for submission to the inquiry.
Thank you. And as for any cause, and Mr. Blake tried quite hard to get you to describe a post office position on whether prosecutions went up after the introduction of Horizon. You'd defer, wouldn't you, to a witness who was in charge of security at the post office, who has given evidence before us to say that the increase was more to do with the low numbers before he arrived in September 1999. And it then, after a short dip, went up because of an improvement in efficiency of the investigation team from around 2001 onwards. You would defer to a witness of fact as to what was happening at the time.
I think my statement was clear in terms of I recognised that the numbers of convictions went up pre the introduction of Horizon and post the introduction of Horizon. In terms of the root cause of why those were the case, I do not know.
I'm very grateful. So that's all that I ask.
Can I be, at least attempt to be clear in my mind, Mr. Recaldin? As I understand it, your Appendix 2 is, as we sit here, the best attempt you can make to provide accurate information about the number of convictions between 1990 and 1999 on the one hand, and 2019 on the other.
Yes, Sir Win.
Right.
On the basis that it continues to be dynamic because the data still comes in and we evaluate in a live environment.
Right. As you say in Appendix 2, that is subject to caveats which you set out at paragraph 71 of your witness statement.
Yes, Sir Win.
So in looking at that table, I have to go back to paragraph 71 and read what it says, yeah?
Yes, Sir Win.
the figures between 1990 and 1999, they may be wrong in the sense that there is information missing, as I understand it.
Yeah.
But there were at least that number of convictions in those years.
Yes.
Is that? And of those convictions, by a process of assessment or analysis, the figures in brackets attempt to categorize the convictions which related to what we call shortfall.
Correct, Sir Win.
So that I can be, if what you're telling me is correct, I can be reasonably confident, for example, that in the year 1999, there were at least 51 convictions, of which 21 related to shortfalls as Post Office assess it.
Correct, Sir Win.
Right. So far as 2001 and onwards is concerned, my understanding of the last column in the table is that that records the number of what you have defined as horizon-related convictions.
Correct.
So that in fact there were many more convictions, I'm saying many, there were more convictions in each year, but those are the record of the convictions which Post Office regard as being horizon-related as you have defined it.
Yes, Sir Win.
And there is no doubt that there were those convictions because you have a record of those convictions. So the only area for debate would be whether or not they were horizon related.
Yes, Sir Win. And if I can refer you to item 5, the note under the appendix 2.5 for 2001, we can see there are 35 horizon-related cases, and there were 44 non-horizon. So overall, there were 79 convictions.
Yeah, I'd follow that.
And 13 of the 44 non-horizon cases are likely to involve a shortfall in the branch.
Yeah.
So, yeah. So they may have been to do with a branch without the horizon system in it.
I follow. All right. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Sir Win.
Anything else from anyone?
No, sir, I think we are finished.
Very well. So we start again on Tuesday. Oh, sorry. First of all, Mr. Recaldin, thank you for 3 witness statements, one produced at very short notice, obviously, and for coming to explain some parts of those witness statements this afternoon. And we'll start again at 10 o'clock on Tuesday morning.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.